Welcome to today's episode of Queerly Natural, where we talk about queerness in the natural world. We discuss different traits and qualities of animals, plants, fungi, and more, and how they relate to queer identities in humans. Some may argue our identities are not natural, and we are here to say they queerly are. We're your hosts. I'm Alana.
And I'm Sage. Join me on this fun exploration of the life of the white-throated sparrow, a cute little borb. Hi, I'm Sage, and today on Queerly Natural, we will be talking about the white-throated sparrow, or Zonotrichia albicollis. Alana will not be with us today. As I said last time, she is still in Alaska. She will be back with us next month. But today, we'll have a nice, relaxing, intimate time. Just you and me talking about this little borb. So the white-throated sparrow, Zonotrichia albicollis, is found in forests throughout much of the United States and Canada. Regions where they aren't found include the desert in the southwestern U.S., northward to Idaho, as well as the west coast and northern extremes of Canada, including Alaska. So that's where they're not found, but pretty much everywhere else in the United States and Canada, they are seen at least part of the year. They're one of the most common and widespread songbirds on the North American continent. That's just a little intro. You've likely seen this bird, honestly, if you've had a bird feeder in your backyard. If you're American and you watch it in the winter, you've likely seen it. There's a small region of New England and upstate New York where they're found year-round. I've been particularly attentive for this bird recently. I'm located in upstate New York, and my spouse has been very into bird watching. So we've been going out specifically looking for birds, and I'm doing this research on this cool-ass queer bird. I'm not going to spoil it yet for you, but we're going to talk about that. And I read that this is one of the few places they're found year-round. So I've been looking specifically for it. My spouse is looking specifically for it. They're the more intense birder of the two of us. They have the binoculars, the professional tools. But neither of us has seen this bird yet. And, it's a little disappointing. But we're going to keep an eye out in the winter, too. I guess I'll start by painting you a word picture of an actual picture I'm going to look at. Because, we all need the simple words before we get into the big ornithology words. The simple borb words, and then we'll do the ornithology words. So I'm pulling up a picture right now. I got this little borb. They're cute. And the one I'm looking at, they have their head thrown over their shoulder, and it looks like they're screaming, probably singing. Its tummy is like a soft, mottled gray-brown. Its wings are a clearer, more defined brown with like clearer, more defined streaks of black with like white on the edges of some of the feathers. And then the face is like the same color as the tummy on the cheeks. But then, of course, under the beak, you have the white throat. It looks like a little bib or like a Santa beard. And the white throat is like kind of bordered in like a darker gray or a black. And then on the head, on the crown, there is like a black stripe through the eye. And then there's a yellow splotch above the eye. And then there are black and white stripes on top of the head. And I'm going to look for some other pictures because sometimes, the females look different. Sometimes some of the birds look different. And I want to just, get the whole thing for you. Okay, so here's a different looking bird. It looks similar to the other bird, but the white and the black on the head is less contrasted. And the yellow patch above the eye is less bright. Okay, those were our borb words for today. And now we're going to turn to our ornithology words. Those are all the borb words I have for you. Sorry. I couldn't find a picture of the egg or the young bird, but 'tis the nature of iNaturalist. I'm sure that, it's harder for the people taking the iNaturalist pictures to find the eggs and the young, because hopefully they're hiding their nests pretty good. I feel like that's a good sign for them. So I'm rooting for them. I'm hoping that's the case. I forgive science for not intruding on this bird's little life. Let them live their little lives. moving on to the ornithology words. Let me pull them up. Okay, so this description, as I think the past few descriptions have been, is from the Animal Diversity Web. If you just Google the white-throated sparrow, it's like one of the first things that pop up. Okay, so our official description says, the white-throated sparrow is approximately 2.6 to 2.9 centimeters long. The head has tan and black stripes on the top, or white and black stripes. As I said, there are those two different looking birds. And then they have gray below and on the sides of the head. Between the bill and the eyes on both males and females, there are bright yellow blotches. As I said, on the two birds, it looks like brighter and duller. Zonotrichia albicollis has a white throat with a black border and a whitish belly. The back is brown with dark streaks, and the wings are also brown. White-throated sparrows have dark bills and pink legs. The dark bill separates it from similar white-crowned sparrows. And I'm pretty sure Zonotrichia, the genus, is called the crown sparrows. The dark bill is what separates it from its cousins. I want to look at the legs again, because I did not say that they were pink, but that's baby. I want like a closer up picture. Come on. Okay, yeah, they're pretty pink. Back to the description. There's more. Those are like the colors on its body. This is more like general information. The eggs are pale blue or greenish blue and speckled with purple, lilac, or chestnut. At hatching, the chicks are naked, except for sparse patches of brown down on the head, back, and wings. Their eyes are closed and they're clumsy, like most babies. I mean, though there are some not clumsy babies, like horses or something. Adults have both tan and white stripes, as opposed to first-year birds, which only have tan stripes and are heavily streaked underneath. White-throated sparrows are sexually dimorphic, meaning the male and female are somewhat different. There are small variations in color between the males and the females. Male sparrows have darker stripes on the head and brighter yellow blotches. So that might have been some of the coloration differences I mentioned before. We'll talk more about that later, though. It's weird being the one using the borb words, looking at the picture, but also like knowing some of the stuff. Anyway, their song, it's very whistly, and it sounds like they're saying, "Oh, sweet Canada, Canada," or "Poor Sam Peabody." I don't hear the words necessarily. I think it's really kind of confusing trying to like put words to it because the end of the song is pretty repetitive. It's hard to describe. I'm bad at whistling. If I was good at whistling, I'd do it for you, but you're out of luck. Go look it up. Maybe I'll insert it here if I can find like something that's not protected by the law. I'm gay and I do some crimes, but not the ones they're going to catch me for. Every time I laugh, I'm laughing at myself. I'm alone. No one's here with me. I'm not talking to anybody. It's between you and me. Okay. Next, the habitat and ecology of the white-throated sparrow. These birds are found in coniferous and deciduous forests throughout much of Canada and the U.S. Coniferous forests consist of softwood trees that don't lose their leaves every year, whereas deciduous forests are of hardwood trees that do lose their leaves every year. They spend the summer breeding in Canada and part of northeastern U.S., including part of New England and New York. If you want to look for this bird, in the summer, they'll be in forest openings with low, dense vegetation, such as regrowth after logging, fire, or insect damage. They will also be found on the edges of ponds, meadows, and bogs that border forests. So if you want to look for this bird, in the summer, when it's breeding, it's not as likely to come to a feeder because in the summer, there's like stuff for it to eat that isn't in a feeder where they don't have to bother like coming near someone's house. They'd rather like live their lives. So in the summer they can do that. You'll find them in the forest. And then in the winter, they spend their time in the eastern and midwestern U.S. as well as along the U.S. West Coast. And as I said, they're not found in like the southwestern desert of like Utah, New Mexico, those places, and then up to Idaho. But there's like a strip along the West Coast where you'll see them. During migration in winter, these birds are found on the edges of woodlots, hedgerows, thickets, weedy fields, suburbs, backyards, and city parks. They readily eat from backyard feeders in the winter. There's less for them to eat out in the woods, so they come where the free food is. And as for what they eat, They are omnivorous, meaning they eat both plant and animal matter. They are fed mostly insects when they're like fledglings, before they can fly and get their own food. And then as adults, their diet consists of seeds, fruits, and then insects as well. They forage for seeds on forest floors and bushy clearings, also among grasses and weeds. So the seeds they eat are mainly seeds of ragweed or buckwheat. So when this bird is foraging, it'll be on the forest floor. And when they're on the ground, white-throated sparrows don't walk or run, they only hop. And as they're foraging, they'll use both their feet to scratch backwards on the leaf litter, and then they pounce forward on anything that they've uncovered. They'll also take leaves in their beak and toss them aside by like flicking their head. And then some of the fruits they eat are sumac, grape, rose, blueberry, blackberry, and dogwood. If you think of especially like blackberry, blueberry, like these are shrubs. Sumac can get pretty big, but it's not like an overstory tree. These are shrubs. These are like bushy things. Like blackberry is very like thorny and it comes out in like thickets. And so like that's where they'll be found. Places with dense low vegetation. And those are the types of fruit they'll eat when they're there. And then when insects are available in the summer, they eat large numbers of insects they catch on the forest floor or on quick flights between perches. These include dragonflies, wasps, beetles, flies, and stink bugs. They also eat spiders, millipedes, centipedes, and snails, though these aren't insects. In the spring, they eat tender buds and blossoms and young seeds of trees like oak, maple, apple, beech, and elm. So they're very seasonal eaters. They have a schedule they're on. They eat what's available. And when what they want isn't available, they'll come to your bird feeder. So that's what they eat. What eats them? White-throated sparrows are prey for many mammal predators, including raccoons, Cooper's hawks, American crows, great horned owls, least weasels. I'm not being mean. Someone else was mean before me. I'm going to break the cycle and call them the most weasel. No, I'm just kidding. That might be a different species of weasel. Yeah, no, it doesn't look like there's a most weasel. There's only a least weasel. Wow. They looked at this weasel and they were like, this is the least weaselly of all the weasels we've seen so far. I guess all the other ones, like none of them particularly stuck out as the most weaselly. But this one, they were like, this is the least weaselly. But that's just not nice. Anyway, they're prey for these least weasels. They can take down a white-throated sparrow. And then their last predator on my list, I'm not saying this is a comprehensive list, is house cats. House cats are devastating to songbird populations. So if you have a house cat, please do what you can to keep it inside. I know that's a controversial opinion in some people's eyes for some reason, but like if you take a cat outside, at least train it. It's not too hard. I have 4 cats. I have a grumpy old fat old man cat. I trained him on a leash. He'll do it. He's not too happy about it. He's not too happy about being outside in general though. I think he's like genuinely fond of just being a fat old cat inside. Doesn't have to worry about anything. But I got him to tolerate it, and I think if he'd been motivated to go outside and he'd enjoyed going outside, I think it would have been much easier. That's my cat. Every cat's different. Do your best with your cat. And that's all I'll say. So the white-throated sparrow, to avoid the predators I listed, they will rely on their coloration, which allows them to camouflage in their environment in the forest. They also always nest near trees, bushes, stumps, or logs, so they have a place to perch and watch for the approach of predators. They nest on edge habitat, meaning the edge between forest habitat and another type of ecosystem. So between a forest and a bog, or either of those in a meadow. Nests are constructed on or near the ground in level areas and clearings with dense ground vegetation. The nest is usually built under shrubs, grasses, or ferns, sometimes under dead vegetation. The nests are usually located at the base of trees or logs, as I said, so they have somewhere to perch and keep an eye out for anyone trying to take a bite of them. So that's usually where the nests are. They're usually on the ground in a densely vegetated area. However, occasionally, nests can be found in trees 10 to 15 feet off of the ground. These elevated nests are usually constructed by mating pairs that had a previous ground nest that had eggs taken by a predator. So the birds go through that and then they learn. These nests high off of the ground can be built in the roots of uprooted trees, in brush piles, or in shrubs or ferns, or like in the tree 10 to 15 feet up. And then when the female builds the nest, she does so mostly in the mornings. She'll start by finding a depression in the ground, because like I said, most of the nests are on the ground. She finds a depression, fills it with moss, and then builds the walls using grass, twigs, wood chips, and pine needles. She then lines it with fine grasses, small roots, and deer hair. Once finished, the nest measures 3 to 5.5 inches across on the outside, and the inner cup is about 1.7 to 4 inches across and about 1 to 2.5 inches deep. So the walls of the nest are pretty thick, and the inner cup is much smaller than the overall nest itself. Nests are used for a single breeding season and then not reused again. Females are fertile for a period starting just before nest building and ending at the end of egg laying. During a breeding season, a female will lay 1 to 6 eggs in a clutch, and she'll lay 1 to 2 rounds of eggs. The eggs are about 2 centimeters tall by 1.5 centimeters wide. The birds nest for 7 to 12 days. So obviously she wouldn't lay the eggs until the nest is constructed. So egg laying, incubating, fledgling, all that stuff, like the babies are in the nest, like the birds living in the nest lasts for 7 to 12 days. Time from pairing to egg hatching. So not just nesting, but pairing up and then constructing the nest, laying the egg in the nest, incubating, hatching, raising the young. Takes 28 days. A mating pair will stay together for the summer, and birds will choose new partners the next year. During the breeding season, males are territorial, aggressively keeping other birds off their territories. How aggressive they are will peak during the breeding season, and then it'll decrease later in the breeding season. They become kind of nicer to their neighbors. And then by the fall, they'll all form a large flock and forage together and migrate together. So I guess by the end of breeding season, they're like, oh shit, I gotta fly next to this guy down to America. So I better not be so mean to him anymore. But yeah, they become less aggressive, and then by the fall, they're good buds, foraging together, migrating together. In addition to white-throated sparrows, these flocks that will forage together will include other sparrows of the genus Zonotrichia, as well as dark-eyed juncos. And interestingly, white-throated sparrows are known to sometimes mate with juncos, creating hybrids, even though juncos and white-throated sparrows don't really look alike and they aren't closely related. I should have looked into what happened with the hybrids, because I bet they can't reproduce themselves or something. Otherwise, we'd probably see more of them, because juncos are not uncommon either. Well, they might be some places, but where I am, they're not uncommon. There are also hierarchies or pecking orders in these flocks, with males typically being dominant over females. And for this reason, females migrate further. They go further south than the males do, likely to avoid competing with the dominant males in the winter flocks. They'd rather just stick out on their own. Also, they're physically smaller than the males, so they like the warmer climates that are further south. And then on top of that, since they go further south, they aren't the first to get back the next summer. So the males will arrive first, and then they'll have a couple weeks to establish territories before the females arrive. So that's a little bit about their habitat, ecology, what they eat, what eats them, a little bit about their life cycle, how they migrate. Now let's talk about the human impact. These birds directly benefit us as humans. They are important in seed dispersal in their forest habitats. In addition to that, they eat insects that are pests to us. They eat millipedes, centipedes, spiders. And then in return, humans negatively impact them. They are of low conservation concern because they are relatively abundant, but they have declined by about 0.74% annually, which doesn't sound like a lot, but over the course of 1966 to 2019, so what is that? 53 years. That slow yearly decline has caused their population to fall a cumulative 33% across North America, according to breeding bird survey data collected by the U.S. Geological Survey. The loss of this bird, a third of its population, is likely due to loss of the bird's habitat to agriculture or to forest maturing. Without disturbance like fire or insect damage, the densely forested clearings this bird needs, the blackberry thickets, the short trees, those sorts of things, those clearings mature into older forests with bigger trees and less undergrowth. But this bird lives in the undergrowth. It eats the seeds produced and fruits produced by the undergrowth, and it needs the undergrowth to hide its nests. So the less densely vegetated forest we have, the less places this bird has to have its babies, live its life. And the maturing of the forest, especially in the US, is due to the repression of things that disturb the forest. Like I said, fire damage, insect damage. We've lost a lot of insects, so those are less likely to have an effect. Forest fires have been suppressed for the last, 100 years due to campaigns like Smokey the Bear, which were very effective at convincing people that fires of all kind were bad for natural landscapes. It was already against the law for indigenous peoples in the United States to practice regular controlled burns in natural spaces, which they had been doing across the U.S. long before, colonizers came, including in places where you don't think of forest fires as natural. Because of public campaigns like Smokey the Bear, where I am in the Northeast, a lot of people here don't think that our forest is meant to burn because we get so much rain, and so our forests are wetter. But indigenous people here too were, in combination with natural fire starters like lightning and things like that, were making sure that there were controlled burns regularly to clear land for agriculture, as well as manage for certain species like the white-throated sparrow that need certain stages of forest that aren't mature climax forest. In the process, cleaning forest debris, which prevented huge destructive forest fires like we are seeing now. And that was very important in their land management and how they interacted with the environment. So anyway, the disturbance that keeps this bird's habitat around have been suppressed and are less active. So forests are maturing and becoming unsuitable for them. And then in addition to that loss of habitat to agriculture, these birds also migrate at night and are frequent victims of window collisions, unfortunately. And then also, they're very vulnerable to climate change. So right now, they're low conservation concern. They are declining. We have lost a huge number of birds, but their decline is slow enough that they're of low conservation concern. However, they're very vulnerable to climate change. They probably aren't going to be hugely affected if it's 1.5 degrees Celsius, but we are beyond that at this point, and 3 degrees Celsius will be devastating for them. A 3 degree Celsius increase would result in 80% of its summer breeding range being lost. So 80% of the area it breeds in southern Canada and part of the northeastern US will be lost. And then it'll only gain 30% of that area in the north from the tundra warming. So overall, it'll lose half of its range, half of the areas it's able to live in, breed in. And then higher temperatures put the bird's breeding area at higher risk for repeated forest fires. So like I said before, forest fires were being used to regularly manage the land, manage the ecosystem, but regular fires without giving the system time to recover are bad. And that's what's likely to happen if we increase the globe's average temperature 3 degrees Celsius. And that'll be devastating for this little tiny borb. So, no. Thankfully, the depressing part is over. I will shuffle my notes and go cry a little bit because he's so cute. I forgot to rate it on the cute to very cute scale. This is an adorable bird. if I didn't make it clear. It's a very adorable, very tiny borb. So the sad part's over, and when we get back, we'll talk about how it's queer. Hi! I don't really have any updates for you right now. Next month, Alana will be back, and things will be back to normal. Thank God. And we have another surprise coming up for you sometime soon. We have our first guest speaker in the works. With those vague future plans out there, let's get back to the episode. And we're back! It's just me here still. It's honestly so weird to be talking to myself. But I'm glad that you're here with me, whoever's listening to this. So anyway, now to talk about how it's queer. Okay, what's the normal number of genders? Most cis people would say 2. And as we all know, that's unfortunate. It's just uncreative. This bird has 4 genders. 4. That's right. Not 2. Not even 3. We did a fish that had 3 genders. This bird has 4 genders. And let me explain how. So this species exhibits a polymorphism in its plumage, meaning there are different morphs that vary in how their plumage looks. One morph is tan, and the other morph is white. And this color refers to the color of the center stripe on the crown of their head. Males and females are 50% white morph and 50% tan morph each. So each of the 4 genders is 25% of the population evenly. There are 25% white morph males, 25% tan morph males, and then 25% tan morph females, and then 25% white morph females. White morphs, as I said, they have the white center stripe. They tend to have white and black feathers on all of their crown stripes. They have bright yellow splotches above their eyes, and they have a pure white throat patch. The tan morphs, on the other hand, have primarily tan and black crown stripes. Their yellow spot is duller, and they have streaking on the white throat patch. 99% of the time, when these birds pick a mate, they pick a bird of the opposite color morph. So most of the time, it's white males with tan females and tan males with white females. And this is just so cool. This is just the tip of the iceberg of how cool this bird is. So, in addition to appearing different, these 4 genders, in addition to looking different, they also have different behavior and reproductive strategies as well. White morph birds, both male and female, are more aggressive during mating season. And compared to tan birds, they initiate more aggressive encounters. They spend a lot of their time and energy maximizing their reproductive success by pawning some of the work on other birds. And I'll tell you a little bit more about each of them. So white males, these are just the white morph birds. White males sing more often than the tan males. They're more likely to invade others' territories and attempt to copulate with females who aren't their mates. And these are called extra pair copulations, or EPCs, in the literature. And that's how they kind of pawn a portion of the work on the other birds. So they try to mate with these other females, and then they bounce. They don't have to, stick around and take care of them or anything like that. That's the work that they pawn off on other birds as child care. White males are more likely to respond to solicitations for copulation from their mate. Females of both morphs often solicit copulations from their mates, sometimes in response to song from the male, but often they solicit copulations without prior cue from the male. So females are soliciting copulations. White males are more likely to respond to those solicitations than tan males. And then the white females, they do the same thing, but in their own way. They also try to pawn the work on other birds. White females are more likely to solicit copulations from their mate, though this doesn't mean that they copulate more than the tan females. They solicit them more, but as I said, white females are always mated with tan males. And as I said, white males are more likely to respond to solicitations. So tan males are less likely to respond. Both couples, the white female and the tan male, and then the white male and the tan female, they have sex about the same rate because one's always trying to initiate things more and then the other one's more or less receptive. It all evens out. White females are more likely to participate in conspecific brood parasitism. And this is how they try to pawn the work off. So conspecific brood parasitism, let's break that down. Conspecific means same species. Brood parasitism is when a bird will lay its egg in another nest that's not its nest. And other birds do this. The brown-headed cowbird, its whole lifestyle is parasitic, and it lays its eggs in the nests of other species. This bird, the white-throated sparrow, specifically the white morph females, will do conspecific brood parasitism. So they'll lay their eggs in the nests of other white-throated sparrows. And therefore, just like the males, they don't have to take care of them, It's harder for females, the female can't just go in there, do the copulation and leave. The female has to go and lay the egg. But yeah, she lays some of her eggs in the nests of other couples. The childcare is not something she has to worry about. So that's the strategy of the white morphs. The tan morphs, on the other hand, both male and female tan morphs, are less aggressive than their counterpart, the white morphs, and they spend more energy trying to maximize their reproductive success by guarding their nest and taking care of their young. These birds, their strategy is just good parenting. Guard their nest, guard their mate, take care of their young. So tan males, they spend more time during the fertile period guarding their mate than white males do. And tan males are more likely to have their territory intruded on than white males. Tan females are twice as likely to chase intruders out of their territory than the white females. And this may be why tan males are more likely to be intruded on. So tan males are always with white females, which are less likely to help them chase the intruders out. Therefore, the intruders are more likely to come in. Whereas tan females, they're twice as likely to help their white male partner get that guy out of there. Get out of here. That's what she says. So, yeah, they all differ in behavior. They all have a different strategy for success. And one aspect of this that I haven't mentioned yet is the tan males spend more of their time raising the young, and the white males spend more of their time trying to get extra pair copulations. There's a reason for this too, so tan males, they spend more of their time guarding their mate, guarding their nest. They're more likely to be positive that they're the father of whatever egg their mate lays. The white female, though they're less likely to chase intruders out, they're still aggressive to intruders on their territory. They're not receptive to it. So you have the white females being, non-receptive, the tan males trying to chase them out, spending all their energy guarding their nest. So the tan males, in the end, are more likely to know that they're the father of their young. And therefore, by evolution's logic, which is that my genes are better and need to be taken care of, by that logic, the tan male is more likely to know that he's the father, and therefore all that energy he's putting into raising his kids, it's more likely to pay off in the end. It's more likely that his genes are the actual genes in the babies. The white males, they spend more of their time intruding on others' territory. They're not at home guarding their partner as much. They're more likely to have young that end up not being their young. They are more likely to have eggs in their nest that were fertilized by other males, likely other white males trying to intrude on their territory while they were away intruding on other males' territory. So white males, they're less likely to know that they're the father. Therefore, the lower amount of parental investment makes sense. So that's the different strategies they employ. But that's not where it ends. They look different, they behave different, but that's not a coincidence that things line up this way. This is genetically coded. So this is the genetics part of the episode. The white morphs, or the birds with the white center on their head, are heterozygous for an inversion on chromosome 2. So think back to middle school biology. You have the chromosomes 1, 2. In our case, we have 1 through 22. And then we have the sex chromosomes. So these are the body chromosomes. This bird is the same way. They have body chromosomes. I don't know what number they have, but they have all these numbers, and then they have the sex chromosomes, just like we do. They might not be X and Y. I don't know what they are in birds. Not every species has X and Y, but they have a set of sex chromosomes. However, this bird has an additional abnormality on chromosome 2, which is an autosomal chromosome. It's not a sex chromosome, or it wasn't. White birds have an inversion there. The heterozygous, that means that they have one original copy of the chromosome without the inversion, and then they have one copy with the inversion, which means there was a whole section of it that was like snipped out, turned 180 degrees, and then reinserted back into the chromosome. And this was a super gene containing thousands of genes that was taken out, flipped, put back in. A gene in a chromosome is just a section of DNA. You have this whole segment like GT, CEA, all those. You have a segment, a physical location on it. That's a gene. So a certain location, you'll have like the gene for eye color. This is entirely hypothetical, but say it's at the top end of a chromosome. Another copy of the same chromosome oriented the same way has the same gene for eye color in the same place. So when the sex cells are fertilized, there's crossing over where copies of the same chromosome physically cross each other and they exchange genes. And this increases genetic diversity. So you'll have the chromosome you inherited from your mother, but there will be sections on that chromosome that come from your father because they crossed over and exchanged genes, which are, in the same location on both the chromosomes. But when this inversion happened in this bird's chromosome and it flipped, now the genes don't line up anymore. They can try crossing over, but what they'll exchange will not be an eye color gene for an eye color gene. It won't be the same gene because of the inversion. It'll be like eye color, and they'll be exchanging it for a second copy of what? Feather density or something? I don't know. That's another trait. So they can't cross over accurately and maintain the same genes that they had. So because of this inversion, crossing over is not possible within the inversion. So these two copies of chromosome 2 are essentially diverging into a second set of sex chromosomes. There's X and Y. How did they become different? They couldn't exchange information anymore. And that's what's starting to happen here. There's more differences within this inversion over time. And that's how there are 4 genders. It's morphological, it's genetic, and it's behavioral. And that's why scientists say this bird has 4 genders. And while all of these types of evidence make it easy for us to distinguish the genders and study them as scientists, and therefore all of this evidence makes it easy for us to say, yes, this bird has 4 genders. This is not to say that in order to have multiple genders, all of these different criteria must be met between them. There must be morphological, genetic, and behavioral differences between them in order to be different genders. That's not what we're saying. And honestly, having such strict scientific criteria probably prevents scientists from recognizing and naming multiple genders in species that do have them and don't meet all of this criteria. So yeah, this little bird is just good for study and it's very charming. You should definitely look for it if you live in a place where it is found. It's one of the most common birds in North America. So with that, I will leave you just something to think on. This bird has 4 genders. How many genders might we have? And until next time, be who you are, love who you will, because queerly, it's natural. Queerly Natural was created by Ilana Zeitzer, Elizabeth Furman, and Hannah Roden, with music by Megfist20. Thank you, Megfist, for putting your music in the Creative Commons. You are very talented. Visual design for the show is done by Alana Zeitzer. To get updates about the podcast, follow us at Queerly Natural on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We also upload all of our sources and episode transcripts to our website, queerlynatural.com. Above all else, if you liked what you heard today, tell your friends. Thank you so much for listening, and keep an eye out for our next episode coming September 30th. Until next time, stay queer and remember, queerly, it's natural.